This is Messes Belong in the Library, and I'm Angie Manfredi. I'm the Youth Services Consultant. I'm going to be the host for this session. The housekeeping details, if this is the last session you're attending, if you're not going to join us again tomorrow, I'll be very sad, but I understand. This is the last session you're attending. After this one is when you need to do the survey. And that's when you'll get to rate all of the sessions that you got for today, and you'll also get CE credit for the sessions that you did today. If you're going to come again tomorrow, you don't need to do the Survey Monkey until you've finished every session tomorrow, too. It's only one survey. As you might have noticed on the schedule, if it says it's not being recorded, it's not. But otherwise, all of the sessions are being recorded and are going to be posted on the State Library site, including Sheila and Mallory's deck, their slide deck. So if you're like, oh no, I missed this great slide that they were talking about, don't worry, because after it's over, we're going to share that on the State Library's website. So those are some of our housekeeping details. I want to also mention again, we have seen the governor's new statement about libraries closing, and we are trying to get clarification to give you a statement on that, but that has to go through the Department of Ed. And so Michael and the other people at the State Library who are not in Kids First right now are working on that, and we really, really hope that we can get you a statement by the end of today, but we are aware of it and we're working on that as well. So you do not have to register separately for Tuesday's session. The password will be the same, and you can click the links at the same time. So with that having been said, I'm going to do my introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to our presenters. So I'm going to read this formal thing, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about them both. Mallory Inman is Mallory, you want to give a wave? Mallory Inman is the Youth and Teen Services at Norwalk Easter Public Library, working with ages 0 to 17, and knows a program is messy enough when she hears, I'm glad you do this here because I'd never do that at home. Mallory also serves on the Youth Services Advisory Council with me at the State Library, and she's been a great help to me as I moved to Iowa, and she's a great librarian. And Sheila Olson is the children's librarian at Altoona Public Library. She also went to the same elementary school as Dante. We found out this morning. Middle school as Dante, we found out this morning. She's been working as a librarian for the past 8 years at various libraries in the Des Moines metro area. She received her MLS from San Jose State University and has a BA in Theater Arts and Film Studies from Hamline University. She considers herself a very crafty person, and she loves creative STEAM and STEM programming. And she has also helped me out. Even though I continually misspell her name, she still likes me, and I feel like that's a big investment from a person. And she helped me do a presentation at the joint conference about her amazing summer programming, and she's been a real stand-up person for me too. And she currently serves on the All Iowa Reads Children's Committee for us at the State Library. So I'm super glad and so grateful. I want to say again for the 1,000th time, I am so grateful to our presenters for making this transition. It is extraordinary. We are indebted to you. This has been a real gift to Iowa's libraries, and we are so grateful to you for providing it and to switching your program to this format. And so I'm going to let you take it over now.
All right, I'm going to start sharing my screen. So let's see if we can get all of this going. Okay, I hope everyone can see the presentation. Is it, Sheila, is it showing up there okay?
Yep, we can see it.
All right, perfect.
Also, as an aside, you use the same template as me because we're like twins. Okay.
Yes, it's beautiful. I was glad that you mentioned Slide Carnival, and I was like, okay, I need to find something that looks messy, and this one looked very fun, so we're going with it. We just got a little introduction, but I'm Mallory Inman. I work at Norwalk Easter Public Library, which is in Norwalk, which is just south of Des Moines. It's about 10,000 people. And there I am doing some preparation for a program that we will talk about later. We found our messiest photos.
Yeah, I'm Sheila Olson, and I work at Altoona, which is just to the east of Des Moines. And that is me after refilling the food coloring bottles. Yeah, that happened.
And fun story, I was, this is me in the courtyard of my old apartment building doing like a test run of our dyeing program, and my landlord totally walked by as I was doing this, and he was like, what is happening? So these are our goals for the presentation.
Part of the presentation goals today are understanding why messy play is important, why we want to do these types of programs. We're also going to talk a little bit about learning different ways to manage the mess, planning for the program, and making it more manageable while you're doing it so you minimize the mess, hopefully, and coming away with some awesome programming ideas. We both have a lot of experience doing messy programs, and we're going to share our knowledge of what's worked and what hasn't worked, and hopefully you come away with some ideas.
I just had to quote Ms. Frizzle. This is what I think of when I think about messy programs, and we'll talk about these later, but these are some of the examples I found of things that really got the spirit of our presentation, especially that girl just painting her hand. I just love it. So first we want to talk about why you would want to do messy programs. And I know a lot of people already do things like paint and sand tables and slime. I've heard about a lot of it. So if you're already on board and you're like, yes, let's make messes, then think about this part as how you might want to convince a, director or coworker or other person who's not so sure about this whole messy thing, why it's important. So the first part is developmental benefits, and you can find a lot of information about how sensory play, messy play, anything that involves lots of different new textures and experiences is really great for development. But these are some of the ones that I pulled out, and in our slides at the end we'll have some citations that'll have some links to some places where you can find out more about this stuff. But one is sensory exploration. So getting used to new textures. Some kids are all into playing with mud and some of them aren't so sure about it. They might just want to poke something, but it really helps them get used to new textures. And that's how they learn, is by getting their hands in things. Cognitive skills, so especially some of the things we're going to talk about with different sensory tubs or sand tables, water tables, Play-Doh, but also some of the art and some of the other stuff we're going to talk about is great for sorting, for making comparisons, a lot of these early basic cognitive skills. And the art, Play-Doh, slime, all that kind of stuff can help strengthen fine motor skills, develop those fine muscles. And I love telling parents that this will help them be able to write and to do different things that involve a lot of dexterity. Math and science concepts like volume, observation, predictions, cause and effect. Introducing new vocabulary is the one people don't always think about. But when you think about it, if you've got a big tub of slime or if you're playing with Play-Doh, you might say, are you going to slice that? Is it sticky? Is it gooey? Watch it ooze. You're using all these different words that you might not use in normal conversation. And so that's a really cool, kind of unexpected one sometimes. And social skills, sharing, taking turns. There's a lot of interaction and imagination and creativity that is involved in this kind of program too. So by messy, we're talking about all kinds of things, so you'll see a lot of different examples of how that could play out.
So another aspect of this is modeling simple ideas that parents or caregivers can use at home, giving them the confidence to try it out, demonstrating those types of sensory activities, and showing kind of affordable ways of doing things, and also working on projects that do process art, where the actual creating of the art or creating of whatever they're making is what they're learning, and they're not trying to just mimic something that we've already made. That gives a lot of creative emphasis to the programming and inspires a lot of parents.
And we'll talk about equipment later, but since that's a photo from one of my programs, I just wanted to say I got a lot of that stuff at the dollar store. Those bigger red bowls are actually dog bowls, so you can use all kinds of things. So we know that this slide is kind of the opposite of the last one, so both are valid. One is show people things that they can do at home. And the other thing is give them experiences they would never do at home. So a lot of this, you know, simple sensory bins, making Play-Doh even, some of it is like really approachable. But I've also done things like bought 6 boxes of cornstarch and mixed it all together with water and put it in a giant tub. And I don't really expect that people are going to do that at home. So part of it is about the wow factor. It's about coming to the library and doing something really cool and new and unexpected that people aren't going to do at home, that kids might not have done before. It's especially great to reach out to kids who are really exuberant, really love getting into stuff and making messes and saying like, yes, that the library is a place for you to do that too. So as we talked about in the beginning, this is something we both hear, especially with things like paint and Play-Doh and things that are a little messier. So I like to give them those experiences too.
We weren't, in my childhood, I was not allowed to have Play-Doh in the house, so I get that.
Yeah, and you know, we understand that not everyone has the time or the energy or the means to do a lot of this stuff all the time. So it's a good place for the library to be able to step in and provide that experience. So on that note, the first thing we're going to talk about here is how messy are we talking? How do you keep it under control? And then after we do that, then we'll share a whole bunch of different ideas and photos from programs we've done. So luckily I had taken a lot of cleanup photos. So here's some of the realities. We don't want to pretend that it's not a thing. So here's some of our tips for how to keep mess under control-ish. Cover it, cover your tables, cover your floor. The other thing I want to say at this part is that I know I'm really lucky to be able to have a meeting room with a sink in it and a door that closes, and that is not the situation that everyone is working with. I have done some of these sorts of activities out in the library, although if I can do them in their own room or do them outside, I definitely prefer that. But we'll talk about some different ways that you can make things work and not get too out of control. So I like to put tarps down under anything that might be kind of messy and then just sort of be able to pick those up and shake them out afterwards. But I also like to tell parents that we have a vacuum. I know how to use it. It's fine. I expect it to be able to clean up. So, you know, things do get on the floor. Scatter cleaning supplies around the room, paper towels, wipes, hand washing stations. If you have it all in one place, or the only way to get somewhere to clean your hands is to have to touch a doorknob and your hands are covered in paint, then, you know, just kind of think about the logistics of all of that. So if you can have things where people are going to need them, that's really helpful. Don't go overboard. I will talk about this again later because this is a lesson that I have had to learn. But space out your messy programs time-wise, and like, you know, don't expect to be able to do one of these every day or every week, even sometimes every month. And you can mix in messy activities with non-messy activities. Not everything you do has to be like a big messy disaster. It's fine. And think about room setup. That can help keep messes from getting out of hand. So with that said, we have a couple pictures of how we like to set things up. So the picture on the right or the one with all the tarps and tables, that's one of my messy play days where I put out a lot of different activities. And so this is something that I've started doing just sort of maybe every couple of months, a couple times a year, where I kind of go all out and have a bunch of different activities. So I always try to keep things that are going to be messier closer to the sink and try to think about where is going to need table coverings, what's going to need tarps. So that's kind of how I have mine set up. And then I also have a picture of where I laid out my tarps on the floor for drying art. If you're going to do things that take a long time to dry, I highly suggest having its own area, because if people set things down and then someone puts their elbow in it, then it's like everywhere. And then the other is one of my Play-Doh making workshops, and we'll talk about that again later too, but I just kind of wanted to show you how I have everything on the table that someone's going to need, and the instructions, the recipe, kind of all spaced out. So
there we go. So this is our room. I'm lucky enough I don't have carpeting in our meeting room, so we have a bit more leeway there. But speaking of drying areas, this is from one of our programs, the handprint calendars, which I know some other libraries do as well. But we do it every year, and we always have massive groups that come and participate, and we have each table set to 2 months, 1 month on one side, 1 month on the other. But this is one of our hand washing stations, which we just have a bucket of soapy water with some paper towels beside it, and then there's taped to the table, there's a trash bag so that the paper towels can go in there, and we have our volunteers come and switch out the water whenever it starts to look dirty. That's worked really well. And we also invested in drying racks. So we have 2 of those red racks over there that we use not only for kids programs, but also for adult programs. They do take up some storage space, but they have wheels. So we've even wheeled them out and had them at the front desk so that they can come and pick them up on their way out, and they're not carrying a wet piece of art through the library. But we'll talk a little bit more about this. We use painter's plastic to cover our tables. It comes in a roll. It lasts for a while, and you can get it thin or you can get it in a thicker variation. This is the one that we use the most, is the 9-foot roll there, and it is very much like you can take everything that's on the table, wrap it up, throw it away after you're done, and we've found that it is very versatile, and we use it as a lot of our covering, and it's pretty cheap. I think it's like $18 for a roll, and it lasts a couple months.
And something else I was going to say with my drawing is, like, we don't really have room for a rack, but I've started putting that tarp in the same place for drying things, to the point that when we did some art after story time, and it wasn't going to be a ton, so I didn't get it out, but a girl still took her art and put it in that same place on the floor because she was so used to putting her stuff there to dry, which I think is great because it shows that, you know, they know what to do. So I do recommend kind of having a designated way to do it if you're going to do this a ton. So yeah, this might be terrifying to you. I showed this picture to my coworkers, and they said it made their heart rate go up. So a couple things about this. So I found it in my photos on my phone, and I just had to share it. But it does not need to be this messy all the time. I've definitely learned some lessons from this. So for one thing, those bins are way too small for that amount of rice, and so when they were digging in it, it was kind of going everywhere. I've since invested in much bigger ones. Also, kids love scooping something and then scooping it into something else, and so if you don't put enough things in for them to scoop into, then they will just scoop it onto the floor, which I've also learned. And the other thing about this is that I decided that I would do a sensory play activity every Wednesday morning for a whole summer, and then the afternoon I had an art program, and that was way too much. And so this amount of cleanup every week when I also had to set up for another program was totally unmanageable. So learn from my mistakes. It doesn't need to be quite that messy, although they had fun. They had a great time. And then the other one is my preferred cleaning method, which is that after everyone leaves and I can close the doors, I totally listen to my music, drink my coffee, and just like try to zone out and get it done. So you can see my coffee there. And I didn't mean for that to be a transition, but that was totally my Menards mug, and I love buying supplies at the hardware store, so it works out. We wanted to show you that there's a huge variation in the kinds of things that you can buy to use for messy programs, like Sheila talked about with painter's plastic, drop cloths, but then there are some things, and I've linked a lot of them in the end of the slideshow, or when we're done, you can ask me where I bought stuff. But I did eventually invest in some heavier duty tarps because I bought some blue plastic ones that started to flake and wear out and I had to throw them away, and so I wanted something a little sturdier. But if you don't have a big budget or you're not sure you're going to do this kind of thing a lot, we have the column of hardware, dollar store, reused items, and then also the column of sort of more dedicated art supplies that you might want to invest in.
And we have, our library has invested in a lot because we've wound up doing a lot of art programs for all different ages. So we've kind of pooled for the budget for the different age groups to get things like aprons, to get things like the art cups or paintbrushes. And that's kind of something that we all use. So that's how we've planned for that. And we try to use it multiple times. Those tarps that we use for or the painter's plastic that we usually use it about 3 times if it's just markers. If it's paint or something that can't be wiped off, you know, we might not use it again, but definitely just as table coverings for markers or glue and that type of things. We try to get the most reuse out of it as we can. And if you get the thicker painter's plastic that does wipe off, painter's plastic does have a tendency to be slippery. We don't tend to put them on the floor, so tarps are definitely better for that. But the thicker painter's plastic can go through a lot. So we have one roll of that, and we've reused it a number of times.
And the other thing that I kind of have started to think about is what kind of floor covering, because as you saw, I've got a carpeted room that I do all my programming in, might be best for certain things. And sometimes the drop cloths are nice because they kind of keep things from sliding around. And as long as things don't soak through or you put plastic under them, it's kind of nice that they soak things up so that it can't get stepped on and carried around and smeared into the carpet. So I think about that too, about what might be best for different things. So I have a lot of different kinds of drop cloths and tarps and stuff. So let's see. Here now are just a whole bunch of program ideas. So we have this in different categories. We'll start with art programs, then we'll talk about cooking and food programs, play programs, and STEM and science programs. So a lot of different variety.
And we might move through some of them a little quickly just to keep time going. But yeah, if you have any questions about them, we'll do have questions at the end, and you can always feel free to email either of us if you have more detailed questions.
All right, so these are art programs. So we'll talk more in depth about what these actual programs are when we get into them. But it kind of shows that there's a different range. Oh, and we will talk about teen programs, even if they do involve food or art. We decided to put all the teen programs together, so those will be in their own section. So, Art Explorers. This is one of my recent favorites. I've done a lot of different programs that are similar to this. It's art for ages 1 to 4. I've sometimes kept it flexible, called it toddlers and preschoolers. But basically, it's really young kids' art program. You'll notice that this year it was First Fridays at 11 a.m. The first time I did this kind of program, I did it once a week for a month. I've found that once a month for, couple months is a little more manageable because it does end up being a lot of setup and cleanup. This is one of my favorites. I brought, don't worry, brand new plungers at the dollar store and the hardware store, and just got disposable pie plates, filled them with paint, and they could use the plungers to make circle prints on a big roll of paper. This was a blast, and part of the reason that it was fun is because it involves really big gross motor movements. They really like stamping. They could walk around. He actually walked around every single plate and kind of did a circuit doing one of each color. So I really liked that even for kids who don't love, sitting and doing a detailed drawing, or really young kids, they can get the hang of this pretty easily. And that is from a book that I'll mention at the end by Marianne Cole, who has a lot of great art books. And I think this one was from Action Art, which is all about projects that use lots of big motor skills and lots of fun action.
We have, for similar age groups, we did a mini masterpiece program that is kind of similar to this, but I think I didn't have any good pictures from it, so it's not in here. But if you're looking for another title to it, I really liked that because it is
Yeah.
just kind of making a mess.
Another great source, this photo on the left of the squeeze paint for supplies is restaurant supply stores. So those are just food service squeeze bottles that you would use for like ketchup and stuff. But I bought new ones and we used them for paint. And this is actually a recipe from a different Mariana Cole book where you just mix equal parts salt, water, and flour really well so that it's not lumpy, and then you color it and then you squeeze it out of bottles onto sticky paper. And that's another one that's really great for strengthening muscles and for doing something new. They don't usually get to squeeze everything out of a bottle, and so they like the opportunity. And then the other one is doing prints, where we used rollers to roll paint onto bubble wrap and then pushed paper down on top of it to make prints. And I will tell you, with my Art Explorers program, so what I do is I just set out usually 6 different activities, no, 4 different activities. I like to do the same thing on a small table and a taller table, or the floor and a taller table, so that everyone of different ages has something they can reach. And I have promised myself, just as a personal goal, that there will be paint every single time. But there's also always an activity that doesn't use paint, usually an activity that doesn't use paper, like more of a sculpting or stringing kind of thing. So there's a variety. People who don't want to deal with the paint can avoid it, but for people who want it, it's always there. So that has been really fun. I think I might have one more picture of it. Yep. So there's some cool, fun rollers I bought. Those are from Discount School Supply. And there is another picture. This one actually my coworker sent me because I wasn't able to be there for one of the sessions, and so she subbed in for me. And I could tell that they really liked those new printed rollers because like all of the art was made with those. So
if you're looking for a less messy kind of similar to this too, you can do hot glue on like a piece of cardboard or something and have them do rubbings with crayons. I know that's one of the things that we had at one of our stations.
No, that sounds fun. And then this is actually part of my after school program. So I have a drop-in program on our early out days where we'll do a variety of art projects, and they're not always very messy, but sometimes they are. Those plastic droppers, which I believe are also from Discount School Supply, we've also used those with the toddlers, and they really loved it. They hadn't really used something like that before, and they got really into using those. You can do that. These are liquid watercolor paints, and you can put them on watercolor paper or on coffee filters or something that'll kind of soak it up, and they're really fun to play with. On the right is paper marbling that I've done a couple different ways. One way you can do it is with shaving cream, where you put it into, I used one of those rectangular foil baking pans, and you put food coloring in it and swirl it around and then stick paper in it, but you can also do it with foam paint, which I linked at the end.
And we use a lot of eyedroppers too for a lot of our programs. I think I'll have a picture later. One of our favorite programs for parents is actually an evening program that we do called Crafty Kids. This is actually led by our part-time youth services librarian who she does in the evening programmings. She reads a story first and then they do a prepared craft. So this is something that there's a process to it, but you can sign up as a parent, you can sign up as a child, or you can work on it together to create something, and it's always something with a little bit more to it, and then the story that we read is a little bit longer, so it's that kind of early elementary school age, but we've done a bunch of things with that. I think our time is about half done, so I'm going to try and speed. You can go to the next one. Gnome homes are great, but we didn't get to do it because we closed before March 16th. So we have a bunch of like almost made gnome homes. Our makerspace program, we actually got the Governor's STEM Advisory, or the Iowa State University has the grant that they do, and we got their makerspace one that was sponsored by the Science Center of Iowa, and so we got some tools that we used, and we started doing a makerspace program where we had a bunch of resources available that they could use, and this spans ages because we have had younger kids come in. There are kind of safety rules for each of the stations, but like the box cutter, that's an adult one, but you can trace out what you're going to do. And I think in the next slide, we actually show that he's making a board game too. This is some other projects that we do that they've done. We have training that they go through if they want to get a badge for each of the stations, and then they can do the stations by themselves, or some of them require a parent. We also have a hardwood station that uses hammer and nails and has its own safety thing. So we do different things each month, but it's been really interesting to see kind of what kids make. The kid with the smiley face, that's an AT-AT from Star Wars. He was very, very proud of that. And then sometimes we'll have kind of a example of something just to inspire them. So to the left there, that is a Morse code machine. And a telegraph machine, and it is set up. We'll put out kind of different resources based on what we have. So that time we did have some more electrical things, and we were there to help them along with whatever they want to create. We try to find a way that they can create it and do it safely. So that's been an interesting program that we're going to continue, and that was done with that grant. Okay, food programs. We do a lot of food programs at Altoona. So we're going to go through some of them, and they range in ages from preschool all the way up through our teens that we do as well, but we'll go through some of those, starting with my favorite program, which is Fun Size Kitchen. Fun Size Kitchen is a great program that we do for preschool age. It is during the morning, so we do get a lot of in-home daycares, but we scheduled it so that it's after kind of that age preschool gets out, if they are doing preschool. But we, again, read a story to start things off. All the kids go and wash their hands. They come back in, they get their aprons, they get their instructions, which look like what that little girl is holding there. And it has directions with pictures of the ingredients that they need and the process that they need to make it. We do not have an oven. We do not have a stovetop of any kind. All of these are made with microwave or made with just prepping and mixing. And we can go to the next slide. It's a lot of basic kitchen skills that they get the experience doing. They also work on measuring. They work on following the instructions. We have this set up so that each table has resources set for about 5 kids, and then we have about 5 tables. So they are sharing most of the ingredients from but we like clean everything. We'll see how this program works once we reopen, or if it works. But it is a wonderful program, and I especially love it because it has the most adorable photos. If you want to go to the next slide, we have and we have like 50 recipes. So if you're looking for microwave recipes, or if you need recipes for college students, we have a bunch of them. But we also purchased cutting boards and kind of kid-safe knives that we use. So we do some recipes that require chopping, and we have about 2 boards per table so that they share and they work around the table. We've done everything from doing ice cream, we've done chocolates. If you want any of those recipes, there's a lot of them, so I'm not going to put them all up. And I'm not sure how all of them are saved. Again, this program is led by Amber, our part-time staff. Again, she does a lot of these, more of the crafty programs, and she does a great job at them. But we do have a lot of them saved, so if you want a few of our kind of choice ones, I can send you those. We're going to go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a program we did in the fall. If you have seen or followed the hashtag Nailed It, it is a bunch of pictures of people trying to copy some baked item that looked really cute, and then there's looking not as cute with the hashtag Nailed It. It also has a show on Netflix. So this was a school-aged program that we did. I believe it was 8 through 12-year-olds. It was wonderful. I loved it. You can see there on the left was what they were trying to make, and on the right is what they came up with. We had each table set up with the what they needed to make a different cupcake, and then they all worked together to do the Rice Krispie pumpkins with the cake pop cats on top. Which, if you don't know, cake pops are super easy to do because if you get the little Debbie cakes or the little pre-made cakes, you crumble that up and you can chill it to form a ball, and then you can, I think on the next slide it shows we had a chocolate station where they would come up with their chilled cake ball and pour chocolate over it to make their little cats. We cleaned out the fridge. We do have a fridge in our meeting room, so we cleaned out the fridge so that they could chill both that and their Rice Krispie pumpkins in there. And then we as part of this program, it's a lot about timing. With food programs, no matter what the age, timing is a little weird because in some of the ways they're sharing resources, so not all of them can get to different things, but also a lot of them take different amounts of time depending on what they're doing. And if you have, like for our Fun Size Kitchen, someone with multiple kids, it takes them a little longer to do it. So we try to plan for it taking more time than what we plan for. But we do test all the recipes ourselves to see how long they take first and then try to replicate that. But this one ran right to the minute to time. So as parents were coming in, they were just like finishing off their items. We took pictures of everything, and it was a wonderful event that everyone, we do sign up for our programs, and we had 100% attendance. It was fantastic. I think we only had 20 kids that could participate, but we had another one planned for spring break and it didn't happen, but it is definitely something, if we can do, we will do again. All right, and the next one that we did, this is another program we do every year. It is our gingerbread house workshop. We have a method for gingerbread houses. We use graham crackers, and it takes 4 full-size graham crackers and then 4 half of graham crackers. You make the bases first and let those dry, and then you make the tops. We do not use royal icing. We get the big giant Sam's Club vat of icing. That's about, I think it's $25, $30, but it's giant. And as long as you leave a day for it to dry and harden, it takes up a little bit of space, but what we wind up with is these prepped gingerbread houses. If we go to the next slide, you can see that we have it set out where they sign up. They sign up as a family, and they sign up for how many that they need. And we set on the table a house at each spot with the name of whoever is signed up. So that takes away from, because we've had a lot of people come in to try and join that had not signed up, and so we try to advertise it, but it is definitely one of the programs that a lot of people try to get into or want to get into, and we can only make a certain number, and we usually make a couple extra because in the other slide you'll see sometimes they break. But yes, yeah, oh sorry, in the other one. Yes, well that's okay. Pancake art is something that we've done with teens, we've done with school-aged kids as well, and all the way down to kind of our preschool. We've done we have a Wednesday class that is meant for K through 6, but a lot of times we have younger siblings come, so they've done it as well. We actually, with the teens, we used a griddle that our teen librarian brought in, but with the kids we did microwave pancakes, which are super, super simple. If you have the pancake mix where you just add water, I think we used Krusty's pancake mix. We got a big bag of it, and then we put it into those squeeze bottles that you see. We put different squeeze bottles at the tables, and so they could put parchment paper on their plate and squeeze out any design you want. One kid made Ninja Turtles, which was awesome. And then you cook it for 30 seconds, and then depending on how thick the pancake is, some of them take another 30 seconds up to a minute, minute and a half, but you can usually kind of see when they're done. This was a great and super easy and cheap program. We do recommend, those are the microwave safe plates, paper plates, and those work really great. We also use them because they're more heavy duty. We use them for our gingerbread houses as well. And I think one more slide. This is the program that we did. For 2 years, we did a story time about Dia de los Muertos. And if you haven't made these before, they are super fun. These are sugar skulls, calaveras de azúcar, and they kind of work like Play-Doh. So you have the mold, you fill it with sugar and put it onto a piece of cardboard, let that dry. You have both sides of it. So it takes about 2 days because they have to dry individually, and then if you put them together, and that time we did use royal icing to stick them together. And then you can see the little boy to the right there. On that table, we actually invested in smaller bottles, smaller squeeze bottles, to do that detailed icing. And we used the icing, the buttercream icing that we had got from Sam's Club. We used it for that program and gingerbread houses since they were pretty close in time. And it worked really well. You can find them on Amazon. A lot of the stuff that we get on Amazon, and just buy in bulk. So as many as we could get. But I think, yeah, that's that. All right,
We're
going on to play programs.
Play programs now, and I want to leave plenty of time for questions, so we won't go into a ton of detail about a lot of these, but we'll have time at the end if you want to know a little more. Bubble programs, Play-Doh making, messy play, and messes in other programs. So here's Bubbles.
Bubbles are super fun. We love doing bubbles. We've done them for a number of programs as add-ons. We try to do them outside for the most part, so we plan it for a day, but you'll see on the top left, in the top left corner, we had them make their own bubble wands with beads and pipe cleaners, but we've also purchased some wands that we use. We've started doing the buckets instead of the pools just because we found that a lot of times the wands would get lost in under the bubbles, and so it was a lot of kids digging around and it was making more of a mess. Not that we don't love a mess, but we found that the buckets have worked better, and then we do trays on tables for like smaller bubbles. But we've done a lot of bubble programs, all ages, and super cheap. So great. I love bubbles. Everybody loves bubbles.
And I have done a couple of different Play-Doh making workshops. One was open to ages, I think 3 to 8. I've done an older one that kind of focused more on the following a recipe aspect. So I had everything out either on a table for them to grab or on the individual tables along with the Play-Doh recipe that is linked at the end. And it's a really good way for them to learn basic recipe following and measuring skills without having to worry about making something edible. So there's them playing with what they made afterwards. They did get to take it home. And on the top right, you can see this, which is Galaxy Dough. So it's just Play-Doh with black dye, gel food coloring and glitter in it. And it was a great way to market it to older kids who might think they're too cool for Play-Doh, but they're not too cool for Galaxy Dough. And here is my messy playtime. So I've done, as I mentioned before, a couple different iterations of this. This was a one-time program that I did in January. It ended up being a really snowy day, and the people who could get out of the house were very thankful to have something to do. So the first one is a really fun, accessible thing for younger kids. It's mashed potato flakes. So if you put them in your mouth, they just turn into mashed potatoes. I don't encourage that. I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about sanitation than we ever thought we would before, but it is safe. So that's something I really like about those. The middle one is a huge tub of cornstarch and water, which really makes a fun, interesting texture to play around with. The grown-ups thought that was really cool. We have a water table with lots of different toys they can play with, and then a kind of mixing and stirring station. I used dry beans and rice this time, with measuring cups and whisks and all kinds of things for them to dig and sort with. So I just had all these different things set out. We have a sand table, and then I had finger painting with these big, huge finger paint paper dinosaurs. So all of this was just set out for an hour, and they could just kind of come and go and play with everything. And they really had a good time with that. And here's a couple more activities I've done, more digging with bins, and these are just paper shreddings that a coworker had left over from doing an adult program, and I was like, I can use that. So I just let the kids dig around in them. This Play-Doh activity was actually just after story time one day. I just got out the Play-Doh, and on the right is also after story time. I actually got a package with a bunch of those dissolvable packing peanuts that are like made out of cornstarch, and I let the kids use water bottles, squeeze bottles full of water to dissolve them in a big tub. They thought it was the coolest, and those were specifically messy programs. It was just after story time when we were already doing playtime. I decided to do something a little extra. I don't do that every time.
These are some of the things that we've done. Again, just adding 2 programs. The eyedroppers that we used down in the bottom left, so that's baking soda, just a tray of baking soda and colored water or colored vinegar for eyedroppers. And that was a really fun activity. And the eyedroppers are great because they do, again, use those fine motor skills. We use them a lot for our Playdate program. The frozen animals, they're eyedroppers, again, to use water on the ice so that it melts to try and release the animals. And we just have a bunch of little plastic play animals in a tray that we freeze before then. The eggs we had, this was actually for a science program that we do monthly, and we do it on different topics, and we try to do it at a range of ages again. So we have some of the activities that are easier. This one was testing sound, so using different things to put inside of eggs, just plastic Easter eggs, to see if it would shake, see what sound it would make, and they were making a hypothesis of what they thought it would sound like in the egg. We've also done, for one of our programs, we had how to use chopsticks, and they didn't have to use them appropriately, but there were notes there about how to actually use chopsticks. But their goal in there was to get the small bears out of the rice bins with the chopsticks. And that was kind of fun as well.
We're really going to run out of time. So.
Yeah, I know.
We'll go through this really quick.
Super speed through the programs.
I will say I have like at least 15, 20 questions for you. So
yeah, I'm anticipating that. All right, grossology. It's gross.
Grossology. It's gross. It's very gross. We've done a bunch of stuff. Edible snot, glowing germs, where you use glow paint and then you put it under black light after you wash your hands, play with the slime, put it under black light. We also did scat, and we had like different types of scat, and then we had them squeeze Play-Doh, that brown Play-Doh, out of straws. So lots of gross stuff. Next. And slime, I know I saw a bunch of questions about slime. The easiest way I've done slime is actually we did 1 part water, 1 part liquid starch, and 1 part glue, and we got little plastic cups, and we drew the lines on them for the kids so that they would pour to the line. That was the best slime program that we've had. We have also tried with syringes to do mini slimes, and we had all of the ingredients that they would need up at the front with different recipes that they could try, and the older kids could do the syringes themselves, but they did get kind of messy. So for the younger kids, we would have them measured out. But we've done a number of slime programs, and it either goes great or it goes like that. potions class, if anybody wants to do a potions class, I've done it numerous times. I've made up a booklet of science experiments made into spells, and it's a great program. I usually am at the front and we go through the different spells that we're going to do. They have a wand that they get to take home and usually some type of slime that they do. They're all science experiments like the cinnamon and dish soap or the unicorn milk. Worm races, this is another program we've done multiple times. You can bring your worm, you can pick your worm, you get them at the Walmart or someplace for a bait shop, and you race them.
These are some that I've done as part of other programs. We did a science program where we did baking soda paint, where you paint with vinegar and then add baking soda to it. And then also I found a escape room that was on Breakout EDU that had a messy science experiment as part of it. And here's our teen programs.
Teen programs.
Real quick, what is this?
Plastic fusion is something that we've just started doing, but if you have an iron, you can use any type of plastic. You can sew it. You can also, it melts together. If you put parchment paper down, it'll melt and fuse together. So you can make bags out of it. You can make fabric to sew things out of, but it's a great program for teens and youngers if you have some help with the iron. Nail art, again, we've done with teens and younger kids. We had some simple videos going on, and we actually gave them a pack of, they got a Ziploc bag, 2 Q-tips, 2 toothpicks, a fine brush, a bobby pin, and a sponge. And the bobby pin was like a dauber so that they could do, if you straighten it out, it makes a dauber. We also bought some fine brushes that they would use for the detail work. And then we bought a bunch of the little tiny kid nail polishes. So you only got to use one at a time. Galaxy painting. This is actually something that we bought these easels for teens and adults, and we've used them multiple times, and it adds an aesthetic to the program, but it also, it's an investment in a storage space, but it really kind of brings that art to the next level.
I've used book stands for that too. It works.
Yeah, so.
And then this is a dyeing program I did where we did indigo dyeing to do. It's kind of like tie dyeing, but you use a big vat of dye, and you actually, we were planning on doing this outside, and it poured. It was raining so hard. So we did it inside. Having a vat of dye on the carpet made even me like really nervous, but it was fine. So I'd be happy to field more questions about that by email later if you want details, but it was really fun. So we did Cupcake Wars. We've kind of talked about some food stuff already, but they got to vote on who met the challenge the best. Pre-fill your bags of icing, highly recommend. And then we've also done some things where we did Wilton candy melts and put them in silicone molds and then bagged them up. And for this one, they got to taste candies from around the world while their chocolates were setting, and then they got to take them home. So here's materials mentioned. You can look at those later, but it's some of the things that I've gotten a lot of questions about and some of our favorite resources. So questions? We did leave some.
Wow.
I'm going to start by asking.
I know that was like really fast.
First of all, it was great. It was great. Everyone, I think, was really inspired, and it was just like, it reminded everybody of so much play and so much fun that we have. So I think that was a real thing that we needed. We needed to see that and be reminded of that. But I'm going to start with some of the questions that I gathered before we get any more. So how many people do you go through stations at a time? Do you just gauge it by eye, or?
It depends on the program. If it's a messy station, sometimes if you have chairs at tables, that puts a cap at it. So if you think, well, this is really only good for 2 people, I'll put chairs down. But for the most part, or like put how many cups you want at a station, and that usually manages how many can do it at a time for me.
Okay.
For the most part, a lot of my stations, I just kind of let them do it themselves. The Play-Doh making is one where I have a sign-up sheet, and I have 4 to 6 kids at a table, and same with the chocolate making, and then I kind of cap the attendance and set out the number of supplies, but it varies.
I think you mentioned this one in the supplies. Somebody wanted to know your tarps. Where do you get the tarps from? So is that in the supply list?
It is in the supplies.
Okay.
There's nice thicker blue tarps, which I love, and I've had them for years, and they've held up great. Those are from Discount School Supply, and those are that first one, table mats. Those are the ones that I use. But then the other ones are just from the hardware store.
Okay, and then the dryer racks. Where did you buy it, Sheila? Where did you buy
We got them off of Amazon. I do not have a link for those. That was actually purchased on by our adult programming. We have 2 of them. They were not terribly expensive, but I can get a link for that.
And do you go over the rules and expectations before each session? Like
with older kids, I do. With older kids, with the younger kids, also I think saw in the chat, with younger kids, we do not allow 7 and under have to be with an adult in order to be in one of the programs. So we don't have as much problems with the kids coming in by themselves or the daycares or anybody being dropped off, because that's part of our policy that if they are 7 or younger, they have to have an adult with them. So usually where we run into trouble is with the older kids. So we do set guidelines for those programs first.
For mine, for the things where it's a safety concern, like for the Play-Doh, you don't have to cook it on a stove, but it does use boiling water. So I'm very clear about the guidelines for that before we start. And for that one, I also require under a certain age adults. For the play programs, I tend to keep it pretty open, and then I just kind of intervene if I see something like, let's take all of the sand and just dump it on the floor, and I kind of play that by ear, because I don't want the beginning to be a lot of like, here's all the stuff you can't do, but I keep an eye on it.
And the book, Mallory, you mentioned a book, but I see that you have a bibliography attached. So if you were curious about books that were mentioned, you know, I think, yeah, there was some of the books mentioned, so that is included. And everybody, we had a couple questions about when you do food programs, what you do about allergies.
So we all of our programs have to have sign up. So we have a disclaimer on there if they have any allergies to let us know, but we have planned like what the food item is beforehand. So if it, for the any signing up, we try to keep it so that there's a conversation between the adult and us. We've not run into any problems. We actually run into more problems serving pizza at lock-ins.
Yeah, I think none of us are going to be serving food for a year and a half. So, but
probably.
Yeah, so, you know, I don't think that's going to be a primary concern for a while. So many people,
I will say we don't do any peanuts. We never do any peanuts
nuts
in any of our
So the question that I think has come up the most is they want the recipes, and I think that what I'm going to advise to everybody is that you get in touch with them. If you guys want to go back to your contact slide, because I think they had so many in here that I you know, if you guys have some handouts or something, but I think that the best thing to do in this case, I would recommend if any of you really you want to hear more about grossology, or you want to hear something more, maybe if you email them directly, I think that probably is the most direct avenue. But I will say that we're going to have this slideshow, we're going to have the deck up on the State Library website. So if you want to go through that and see the books, or, you know, go from there, I think that would probably be the biggest one. And we did get a couple of questions about, do you have great storage, or where do you store all of this?
We do have a bit more storage than other libraries, I know, but we use all the storage that we have to the max. We have anything that deals with food is in its own bin and gets washed before it gets put back in there, and separated from everything. So anything food use is separated from anything else, and doesn't cross uses. So like our bowls for science are never used for food. But yeah, for the most part, we do a lot of programming. So there are some items that we actually share space with the teen and with the adult. And we have purchased more shelving units to add levels for the storage that we have.
And I don't feel like we have a ton of storage, although I have made the most of it, squirreling things wherever I can. And I try to buy things that are really versatile that can be used for lots of different things. But we do have a decent amount of space just here and there that I have managed to put things.
This is another reason why I love the painter's tarps, because they don't take up a lot of room.
And I wanted to say, which I didn't plan on having to talk about, that I actually filmed a video of me demoing my favorite Play-Doh recipe and posted it on my library's Facebook page and put it on our YouTube page. So it is hard to do this kind of program right now when we're not in the library, but I'm finding ways.
Yeah. Well, and I think as an example of you saying that, that's the perfect kind of thing as we're looking at this in a longer stretch, of like maybe every week it's on the website and they can see you make a mess at your house or something. I think there's lots of adaptable ways that we're going to look at as this develops and continues on. And, I think even encouraging them, I think sometimes I always used to say about programs like that sometimes the adults are just looking for permission, so are there other organizations in your communities that do art and STEM is a question. So you're both close to Des Moines, so
yeah, we have a STEAM team that we do monthly, and then we also have our after school program that kind of does a bit of everything. Sometimes it's art, sometimes it's food, sometimes it's just gaming. So I
think they were talking about like, are there other
communities?
Organizations in your community, like the YMCA, or I think that's what that means.
We have the Altoona campus that does some programs, but a lot of them are more active things, and they deal more with kind of. But we do have kids club as well that's based out of that, and they do after school activities. But you have to pay for it, so it's not free.
Right, the free part. Yeah, the free part. Yes, somebody mentioned partnering with 4-H, and I think one thing too, you can tie to the library. So like that's thing. You can make it a library program. You can read a book at the beginning.
Which we do. We read books at a lot of our programs if they are for elementary or for younger. Some of the older ones we don't do as many books, but we try to have books out at the programs that they can look at or check out. We do also. As far as bringing in people, we like for our fun size kitchen, we actually had Over the Top come in and do a demonstration on how they did the decorating for their ice cream cakes. So they brought in bags that the kids could try to, like squeeze out icing and stuff. And then they made a little ice cream treat. So we try to partner with other groups. We've done a Hy-Vee as well has come in. So we try to do that as much as possible.
Well, here we are.
I wanted to look at the chat.
I know. It's a lot. We're going to save the chats and we're going to work on making them available too. That was a thing we didn't really plan on, and so but we're going to find a way to somehow do it. So I want to say, yay, I'm the only person who can applaud, but woo, it was great. It was amazing. I know everybody got a lot of ideas, and it, like I said, it was just a really good, motivational kind of thing to think about. I
looked at the chat a few times, and it was like moving up. I liked the idea. Somebody said plastic shower curtains too, to use those. And then somebody said pillowcases as aprons, which thought that was a cool idea. But yeah, a lot of the things like the plastic fusion or that, if you look up on YouTube, you'll find videos about how to do that. Plastic fusion especially is a...
Now, again, as we've been saying, now's a great time to start researching and learning, and like, I love this tutorial. I found a great pin on Pinterest. Like, now's a great time for you to have the time to dig in and do that. So everyone, this is our last session of the day, and it is almost 4 o'clock. See, there you go. I've resisted messy story times, but now I'm going to start. See, life changers. What a great wrap up. So this is the end of the day, everyone, believe it or not. And thank you again to Sheila and Mallory. Woo!